October 2024. A powerful CEO stood before his board and declared children were nothing but financial burdens, drains on time, money, and ambition. But when his world collapsed overnight, and a humble maid became the only person standing between his children and foster care, everything he believed was about to shatter. Could the woman he once looked down upon teach him the one truth that money could never buy? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus Blackwell stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office on the 47th floor, surveying Chicago's skyline like a general observing conquered territory. His reflection stared back at him, sharp suit, sharper jawline, eyes that had learned to calculate profit margins before measuring human worth. At 38, he'd built Blackwell Enterprises into a tech empire worth $2.3 billion. And he'd done it by eliminating every inefficiency, every distraction, every unnecessary variable from his life. Children, he believed, were the ultimate variable. The quarterly reports are exceptional. Mr. Blackwell, his CFO, Richard Thornton, announced as he entered with a leather portfolio. Stock prices up 14%. The Singapore expansion is ahead of schedule. Marcus barely nodded. Excellence wasn't celebrated in his world. It was expected, demanded, required. He turned from the window, his Italian leather shoes clicking against imported marble as he walked to his desk. The office was a monument to minimalism, glass, steel, and cold precision. No photographs, no personal items. Nothing that suggested a life existed beyond profit and loss statements. Board meeting in 10 minutes, Richard reminded him. They'll want to hear about the new initiative. Marcus allowed himself the smallest smile. Today, he would unveil his most controversial proposal yet, one that would cement his reputation as either a visionary or a villain. He preferred the former, but didn't particularly care about the latter. The boardroom fell silent when Marcus entered. 12 faces turned toward him, a mixture of admiration and apprehension in their eyes. He'd hand-picked each of them for their ruthlessness, their ability to make decisions based on data rather than emotion. Sentiment, he often said, was the enemy of success. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus began, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who'd never needed to raise it. Blackwell Enterprises has achieved unprecedented growth over the past 5 years. Our productivity metrics exceed industry standards by 42%. But I've identified our greatest remaining inefficiency. He clicked a remote, and the presentation lit up the massive screen behind him. Employee retention and productivity studies show a direct correlation between parenthood and decreased performance. Parents take more sick days, leave early for school events, demonstrate divided attention, and request flexible schedules that disrupt team cohesion. Marcus advanced the slide, revealing graphs and statistics he'd spent months compiling. I propose we restructure our hiring practices and incentive programs to favor employees without children. Those with children will receive reduced benefits packages, while child-free employees will enjoy enhanced bonuses and faster promotion tracks. The room erupted, not with applause, with shock. Marcus, that could be discriminatory, ventured Patricia Chen, the head of HR, her voice barely above a whisper. It's optimization, Marcus corrected coldly. We pay people to work, not to procreate. Children are burdens, financial drains that cost the average American family $310,000 to raise to adulthood. That's capital that could be invested in professional development, innovation, and company growth. Parents divide their loyalty. I'm simply recognizing that reality and rewarding those who demonstrate complete commitment to excellence. You can't possibly believe that, Patricia pressed, finding her courage. Children aren't just expenses. They're liabilities, Marcus interrupted. I've seen too many promising careers derailed by parenthood. Too many brilliant minds wasted on soccer practices and parent-teacher conferences. My own parents sacrificed their potential for me and my sister, and what did it get them? A modest suburban life filled with compromise and regret. I refuse to repeat their mistakes, and I refuse to watch this company suffer because our employees make emotional decisions rather than logical ones." Richard cleared his throat. The legal department would need to review this extensively. The optics alone could be devastating. "The optics," Marcus said, his voice dropping to something almost dangerous, "will show that Blackwell Enterprises values dedication over distraction, that we reward commitment over compromise. We'll be the first Fortune 500 company to openly acknowledge what every CEO thinks privately, that parenthood and peak performance are fundamentally incompatible." He looked around the table, his gaze challenging each board member to contradict him. No one did. They never did. Marcus Blackwell wasn't just their CEO, he was the architect of their wealth, the reason their own portfolios had tripled in value. They might find his proposal distasteful, but they wouldn't oppose it, not publicly anyway. The meeting adjourned with reluctant nods and murmured concerns. Marcus returned to his office, satisfied. Resistance was expected. Vision always faced opposition from those too timid to embrace uncomfortable truths. His assistant Jennifer appeared at his door. "Mr. Blackwell, your sister called again. Fourth time this week." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Tell her I'm unavailable. She said it's about the children." She sounded urgent. "Caroline is always urgent about something," Marcus dismissed with a wave of his hand. "She made her choices. I made mine," but Jennifer lingered, something unusual flickering across her professionally neutral expression. "Sir, she mentioned something about being sick, that she needed to discuss arrangements." "Arrangements?" Marcus looked up sharply. "What kind of arrangements?" Jennifer hesitated. "She didn't specify, but she asked if you could visit this weekend. She said it was important." Marcus turned back to his computer screen, effectively ending the conversation. "My weekend is blocked for the Tokyo conference. Tell her I'll call when I return." Jennifer left without another word, and Marcus pushed the thought of his sister from his mind. Caroline had always been dramatic, ever since they were children. She'd chosen the life their parents had lived, married young, had kids immediately, abandoned her architecture degree to raise 2 children in a cramped apartment while her husband worked long hours at a manufacturing plant. She'd chosen burden over ambition, sacrifice over success. He'd chosen differently. His phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Legal is having a field day with your proposal. This could take months to implement, if at all. Prepare for pushback," Marcus smiled. Pushback was just resistance that hadn't been overcome yet. He'd faced skeptics before, when he'd proposed eliminating work-from-home options, when he'd cut maternity leave benefits to the legal minimum, when he'd instituted mandatory 60-hour work weeks for senior management. Each time the board had eventually acquiesced. Results spoke louder than moral objections. As evening settled over Chicago, Marcus remained at his desk, reviewing acquisition targets and merger opportunities. His office lights were often the last burning in the building, a beacon of dedication that made him both admired and feared. He thrived on that reputation. Respect born from fear was more reliable than respect born from affection. At 11 p.m., he finally left, taking his private elevator to the executive parking garage where his Aston Martin waited. The drive to his penthouse in the Gold Coast took 20 minutes through empty streets. His home was as austere as his office. Modern furniture, abstract art that cost more than most people's cars, and a silence so complete it bordered on oppressive. Marcus poured himself a Scotch 18-year-old single malt that cost $400 a bottle and stood on his balcony overlooking Lake Michigan. From this height, the city looked like a circuit board, lights and patterns suggesting order and logic. No messiness, no chaos, no crying children or domestic obligations. This was what success looked like. This was freedom. His phone rang. Carolyn again. For a moment, his finger hovered over the decline button. Then, perhaps softened by scotch or fatigue, he answered, "Caroline." "It's late." "Marcus." Her voice sounded thin, stretched like wire about to snap. "I need to see you soon. It's not something I can discuss over the phone. I'm leaving for Tokyo on Friday. Can it wait until—" "No." The word came out sharp, almost desperate. "Please, Marcus. I'm asking you to come this weekend. Just a few hours. Bring nothing but yourself. Can you do that? Can you give me just a few hours after 5 years of silence? Something in her tone penetrated his armor of efficiency. Carolyn wasn't dramatic, not really. She was steady, practical, the one who'd held their family together after their father died. If she was calling like this, repeatedly, urgently, "Saturday morning," Marcus heard himself say. 2 hours. That's all I can spare. Thank you. Relief flooded her voice. Thank you, Marcus. You won't. Just thank you. She hung up before he could change his mind. Marcus returned to his scotch, irritated at himself for yielding. 2 hours on Saturday. He'd make it quick. Listen to whatever crisis Caroline had manufactured, write a check if necessary, and return to his life of calculated perfection. He had no way of knowing that those 2 hours would detonate like a bomb through the fortress of certainty he'd spent decades constructing. That the life he'd so carefully designed, free of burden, stripped of distraction, optimized for success, was about to crack open like a fault line revealing darkness. Underneath, the CEO who believed children were burdens was about to learn that some truths can only be taught by shattering everything you think you know. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story, and the teacher would be the last person he'd ever expect to listen to. Saturday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth for October. Marcus drove his Aston Martin through neighborhoods that grew progressively less polished as he left the Gold Coast behind. The GPS guided him to Bridgeport, a working-class area he hadn't visited since Caroline moved there 7 years ago. He'd sent money occasionally, birthday checks for the kids, a generous contribution when her husband lost his job. But he'd never actually visited. There had never been time, never been reason enough to justify the trip. The apartment building was tired but maintained, with window boxes showing the last stubborn blooms of autumn flowers. Marcus parked on the street, checking his watch. 9:47 a.m. He'd give this until noon, maximum. The Tokyo conference material still needed review, and he had 3 acquisition proposals to analyze before Monday. He climbed to the 3rd floor, noting the worn carpeting and the faint smell of cooking, garlic and something sweet, maybe cinnamon. These details offended his sense of order. This was the life Caroline had chosen, trading potential for proximity, ambition for domesticity. Their parents had lived in a building just like this one. He'd sworn he never would. Marcus knocked, and the door opened almost immediately. Caroline stood in the doorway, and Marcus felt something cold grip his chest. His sister had always been vibrant, energetic, the kind of person who lit up rooms simply by entering them. The woman before him was a shadow. She'd lost at least 30 pounds from a frame that hadn't needed to lose any. Her skin had a waxy yellowish tint, and her eyes, once bright with laughter, held something that looked like acceptance of a verdict she couldn't appeal. Marcus. She pulled him into a hug that felt fragile, like embracing a bird. Thank you for coming. Caroline, what? The question died as 2 children appeared behind her. The girl was perhaps 8, with Caroline's dark curls and intelligent eyes behind thick-framed glasses. The boy looked about 5, clutching a stuffed dinosaur and regarding Marcus with solemn curiosity. Both wore clean clothes that had been carefully mended in places, and both studied their uncle with the wariness of children who'd learned that adults were complicated creatures. Lily, Nathan, this is your Uncle Marcus. Say hello. Hello, they chorused, polite but distant. Marcus nodded awkwardly. He had no practice with children, no instinct for how to speak to them. They were foreign creatures, operating on logic he'd never bothered to learn. Come in, Caroline said, ushering him inside. Kids, go play in your room for a bit. Uncle Marcus and I need to talk. The apartment was small, but immaculate. Toys were organized in bins, books arranged on shelves built from cinder blocks and planks. Children's artwork covered the refrigerator, crayon drawings of families and houses and sunshine. A second-hand sofa faced a television that had to be at least 15 years old. Everything spoke of care applied to scarcity, of making do with grace. Marcus sat stiffly on the sofa while Caroline made tea. The apartment's warmth felt oppressive after his climate-controlled penthouse. Through the thin walls, he could hear a baby crying and someone's television playing a soccer match. Caroline returned with 2 mismatched mugs and sat in the armchair opposite him. She moved carefully, like each gesture required calculation. "You're sick," Marcus said flatly. "Not a question. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer." Caroline's voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she lifted the mug. "They found it 6 months ago. I did chemotherapy, but—" She shrugged, a gesture that contained volumes of defeat. "It's aggressive. The doctors give me maybe 3 months. 4 if I'm lucky." The words hit Marcus like numbers that didn't compute, data that refused to fit any spreadsheet. 6 months? And you're only telling me now? I tried telling you." No accusation in her tone, just fact. "You were always in meetings, always traveling, always too busy. I left messages. Eventually I stopped trying. You made your position on family obligations very clear a long time ago, Marcus." He wanted to argue, but the truth sat between them like a third presence. He'd avoided her calls, dismissed her attempts at connection, reduced their relationship to occasional checks and birthday cards signed by his assistant. He'd amputated his family like dead tissue, convinced it was necessary for his success. "Where's Daniel?" Marcus asked, referring to her husband. Caroline's laugh was bitter. "Gone. Left 8 months ago, before the diagnosis. There was someone else at his office, younger without complications." She set down her mug, and Marcus noticed her wedding ring was gone. "I can't really blame him. I wasn't easy to live with after my mother died. I was grieving, he was struggling with work stress, and we just came apart. He sends money occasionally, but he started a new life in Phoenix. He hasn't seen the kids since June." Marcus felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Not quite guilt, but its precursor. "What about treatment?" "There must be other options. I can pay for the best specialists, experimental treatments." "I've seen the best specialists, Marcus. Your money can't fix this." Caroline leaned forward, and her eyes held an intensity that pinned him in place. "I'm not telling you this so you can throw money at it. I'm telling you because I need something much harder from you. Something that will cost you more than money ever could." Marcus's throat tightened. He knew what was coming and could see it approaching like headlights in fog. "Lily and Nathan need a guardian," Caroline continued. "Daniel's parents are in their 80s and have their own health issues. My friends are wonderful, but they have their own children, their own struggles. You're my only family, Marcus. You're their only family." "No." The word came out sharper than he'd intended. "Caroline, I can't. I'm not equipped for children. I work 80-hour weeks. I travel constantly. My entire life is structured around my company. Your entire life is structured around avoiding anything that might require you to feel something," Caroline corrected gently. "You've turned yourself into a machine, Marcus. An efficient, successful, empty machine. And now I'm dying, and my children need someone, and there's no one else." Marcus stood abruptly, crossing to the window. Below, children played on the sidewalk, their laughter drifting up like smoke. "There are other options. Boarding schools. Professional guardians. I can fund their entire upbringing, ensure they have every advantage." "They need family," Caroline interrupted. "Not money, not advantages. Family. Someone who remembers their mother loved them. Someone who'll teach them about where they came from." "I barely remember where I came from," Marcus said bitterly. "I spent my entire adult life trying to forget. That cramped house, Dad working himself to death at the factory, Mom taking cleaning jobs to pay for our school supplies. The constant worry about money, the arguments that kept us up at night, the way they gave up everything they wanted so we could have slightly more than nothing." "That's not a legacy, Caroline. That's a warning." "That's love," Caroline said quietly. "They loved us, Marcus. Imperfectly, yes, but completely. And somehow, despite everything, I learned how to do the same. But you learned to be afraid of it." Marcus turned to face her. "I'm not afraid. I'm realistic. I built something meaningful with my life instead of—" He caught himself, but it was too late. "Instead of what?" Caroline's smile was sad but not wounded. instead of ending up like me, broke sick raising kids in a cramped apartment. You're right, Marcus. You won. You made all the right choices, eliminated all the inefficiencies, optimized your entire existence. And you're the most successful, miserable person I've ever known. The silence stretched between them, filled with years of distance and choices that couldn't be unmade. I can't do this, Marcus finally said. I'll hire the best nannies, set up trust funds, ensure they're provided for. But I can't be what you're asking. I don't know how. Caroline stood, moving to a drawer and withdrawing an envelope. I wrote letters to them, explaining why they couldn't stay with their mother, why their father wasn't there, why they ended up wherever they end up. I tried to make it sound like it wasn't abandonment, like it was somehow for the best. She held out the envelope. But we both know what it is when family chooses convenience over connection. Dad taught us that when he worked himself to death rather than admit he needed help. You perfected it when you decided people were just variables in your equations. Marcus didn't take the envelope. That's not fair. No, Caroline agreed. Dying at 39 isn't fair. My kids losing both parents isn't fair. None of this is fair, Marcus, but it's happening, and I need to know they won't grow up thinking they're burdens, that they won't learn from you that love is weakness and family is a liability. Her voice cracked. I need to die, knowing someone will teach them that they matter more than profit margins. Through the bedroom door, Marcus heard the soft sound of the children playing, Lily reading to Nathan in a patient older sister voice. The dinosaur roared dramatically and Nathan giggled. I have to go, Marcus said abruptly. I need time to think, to figure out the arrangements. Caroline nodded, exhaustion suddenly visible in every line of her face. The kids are in school until 3 on weekdays. I'm weakest in the afternoons. If you're going to visit again, mornings are better. If, not when. She'd already accepted his answer. Marcus left without saying goodbye to the children, taking the stairs 2 at a time, as if speed could outrun the weight settling on his shoulders. In his car, he sat gripping the steering wheel, staring at the building without really seeing it. Children are burdens, he'd told his board just days ago. Liabilities that drain resources and divide attention, but the woman dying in that apartment hadn't looked burdened. She'd looked freed by something he'd never possessed. The certainty that her life had mattered, because it had created life that would continue beyond her. Marcus started the car and drove back toward the Gold Coast, toward his empty penthouse and his perfectly optimized life. But for the first time in years, the silence that greeted him didn't feel like peace. It felt like the sound of something essential missing, a hole where connection should have been, growing larger with every choice he'd made to protect himself from exactly this kind of pain. He poured a drink and stood on his balcony, and the question Caroline had asked echoed in his mind. What did you win? He had no answer that satisfied. Marcus threw himself into work with renewed intensity, as if burying himself in acquisition deals and market analysis could erase the memory of Caroline's sunken eyes and trembling hands. The Tokyo conference consumed his week, 16-hour days negotiating partnerships, delivering keynotes about efficiency and innovation, networking with executives who shared his philosophy that sentiment had no place in business. He was brilliant. Everyone said so. His presentation on eliminating workplace inefficiencies received a standing ovation. 3 different CEOs approached him about consulting contracts. A journalist from Forbes wanted to profile him for their Visionaries Under 40 issue. Success should have tasted sweet. Instead, it tasted like nothing at all. Thursday evening, Marcus sat in his hotel suite overlooking Tokyo's glittering sprawl, reviewing the proposal Richard had sent. The legal team had found a workaround for his child penalty initiative, framing it as a dedication bonus for employees who demonstrated undivided professional commitment. It was clever. It would probably survive legal challenges. The board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. His phone rang. Jennifer's number. Mr. Blackwell, I'm sorry to disturb you, but there's been an emergency. Marcus's first thought was the company, a data breach. A hostile takeover attempt. Something catastrophic with the Singapore expansion. What happened? It's your sister, sir. The hospital called your office when they couldn't reach you directly. She collapsed this afternoon. They've admitted her to Northwestern Memorial. The hotel room tilted slightly. Collapsed? The infection she'd been fighting became septic. They said she's stabilized, but Jennifer's voice softened. They said you should come back. If you want to see her, you should come back now. Marcus looked at his schedule. Dinner with the CEO of Tanaka Industries, breakfast meeting with potential investors, a tour of a robotics facility that could revolutionize their manufacturing division. 3 more days of crucial networking, of opportunities that might not come again. Book the next flight, he heard himself say. Cancel everything here. Tell Richard to handle the board meeting prep. Yes, sir, Mr. Blackwell. There's something else. Jennifer hesitated. The hospital mentioned children. They're asking about arrangements for the children while your sister is hospitalized. Marcus closed his eyes. I'll handle it. The flight back was 14 hours of turbulence and sleeplessness. Marcus tried working on his laptop, but the numbers blurred. He ordered scotch, then didn't drink it. The businessman beside him attempted conversation and quickly retreated in the face of Marcus's cold silence. Somewhere over the Pacific, Marcus stared out the window at endless darkness and thought about efficiency. His entire philosophy was built on it, cutting away everything unnecessary, streamlining processes, eliminating waste. He'd applied that logic to his entire existence, and it had made him rich beyond imagination. But what exactly had he streamlined himself into? A man alone in first class, racing toward his dying sister, realizing he couldn't remember the last time he'd said, "I love you" to anyone. Couldn't remember the last time anyone had said it to him. The plane landed at O'Hare at 6 a.m. Friday. Marcus went straight to the hospital without stopping at his penthouse. Northwestern Memorial rose against the dawn sky, all glass and steel, architecture he normally admired. Today it looked like a fortress holding something he was terrified to confront. Caroline was in the ICU. The nurse at the station looked up as Marcus approached. His expensive suit wrinkled from travel, his hair uncombed for perhaps the first time in his adult life. "Caroline Hensley," he said. "I'm her brother." The nurse's expression shifted to something like sympathy. "Room 7, but sir, she's sleeping." The sedation. Marcus was already moving. Room 7 was at the end of the hall, and through the glass wall he could see his sister connected to machines that beeped and hummed, keeping her tethered to life through chemistry and technology. She looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, her skin translucent under fluorescent lighting. He entered quietly, pulling a chair to her bedside. Her breathing was shallow but steady. An IV dripped clear fluid into her arm. Monitors displayed numbers and graphs that Marcus understood academically but not emotionally. Heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen saturation. Data that represented the failing systems of the person who used to braid his hair when he had nightmares, who taught him to ride a bike, who called him after every one of his business triumphs, even though he never called her back. "I'm here," Marcus said quietly, feeling foolish talking to someone unconscious. "I came back." Caroline didn't respond. Hadn't he optimized away the possibility of this exact moment? Hadn't he structured his life specifically to avoid sitting in hospitals, watching people he loved disintegrate into medical statistics? A doctor entered, young, exhausted, the haunted look of someone who delivered bad news as a routine part of their day. "Mr. Blackwell?" "I'm Dr. Patel. We spoke on the phone." Marcus stood. "Her prognosis?" "The sepsis is under control, but it accelerated the cancer's progression. Her liver and kidneys are beginning to fail. We can keep her comfortable, but..." Dr. Patel's expression held professional compassion. "Days, maybe a week if we're fortunate." "I'm sorry, days." The word hung in the air like a sentence being pronounced. Marcus had scheduled meetings months in advance, planned acquisitions that would take years to complete. The idea that a human life could be measured in days seemed obscene. "She has children," Marcus said. "2. They're at home." "Yes, Child Services has been contacted, but there's a notation in her file that you're the designated guardian." "Is that correct?" Marcus faltered. It's complicated. Dr. Patel nodded, clearly accustomed to being complicated. There's a social worker on staff who can discuss options. But Mr. Blackwell, those children will need to say goodbye. However you feel about guardianship, they deserve that. After the doctor left, Marcus remained standing, looking at his sister. When had he become the kind of man who found guardianship complicated? When had protecting his lifestyle become more important than protecting children who shared his blood? His phone buzzed. Richard, the board is worried about the sudden departure. The media is asking questions. Need you to release a statement. Marcus turned off his phone. He stayed in that chair for 3 hours, watching Caroline breathe, remembering things he'd thought he'd forgotten. How she'd defended him from bullies in middle school. How she'd worked summers at an ice cream shop to help pay for his college application fees. How she'd been the only one who came to his first office opening, bringing homemade cookies and pride so fierce it embarrassed him. When had her love become something that embarrassed him? Around noon, Caroline's eyes fluttered open. They took a moment to focus, then found Marcus. You came back, she whispered, voice rough from the breathing tube they'd removed. I came back. Tokyo? Doesn't matter. A smile ghosted across her lips. Liar. Everything matters to you. That's always been your problem? Caring about everything except what actually matters. Marcus leaned forward. Tell me what to do, Caroline. Tell me how to fix this. You can't fix this. I'm dying, Marcus. But you can fix what happens after. She reached for his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Those children didn't ask to be born. They didn't ask for their father to leave or their mother to get cancer. They're not burdens, they're people. Small, scared people who need someone to show them that the world isn't just cruelty and abandonment. I don't know how to be that someone. Neither did I, at first. Caroline coughed, and Marcus helped her sip water. But you learn. You get up at night when they have nightmares. You read the same story 73 times because it makes them feel safe. You pack lunches and attend school plays and teach them to tie their shoes. You give up what you want so they can have what they need. And slowly, without realizing it, what they need becomes what you want. That's not who I am. No, Caroline agreed. But it's who you could be. You chose to become hard, Marcus. You can choose differently. A nurse entered to check vitals, and Caroline drifted back to sleep. Marcus sat in that chair as afternoon became evening. As the machines continued their patient monitoring, as the woman who'd loved him despite his best efforts to remain unlovable slipped further away. At 8 p.m., his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Blackwell, this is Rosa Martinez. I'm your sister's neighbor and the person watching Lily and Nathan. They're asking about their mother. They need to hear from their family. Please call. Marcus stared at the number. He could ignore it. Could hire someone to handle these messy details. Could write a check large enough to solve everything that money could solve. But Dr. Patel's words echoed in his mind. Those children deserve to say goodbye. And beneath that, quieter but more insistent, Caroline's voice. You can choose differently. Marcus stepped into the hallway and dialed the number. Hello? A woman's voice, accented warm. This is Marcus Blackwell. My sister is Caroline Hensley. You're watching her children? Yes, sir. Lily and Nathan. They are good children, very worried. Mrs. Hensley collapsed while I was visiting. I brought them to my apartment. They ate dinner, but they keep asking when their mama is coming home. Marcus closed his eyes. Could I speak to them? Of course. One moment, rustling, then a small voice. Uncle Marcus? Lily, the girl with Caroline's eyes and carefully mended glasses. Yes, it's me. Is Mama okay? Mrs. Martinez said she had to go to the hospital. Nathan is scared. He won't stop crying. 8 years old and already acting as parent to her younger brother. Marcus felt something crack in his chest. Your mother is sick, Lily, very sick. But she's comfortable, and the doctors are taking good care of her. Is she going to die? The question was direct, unflinching. Children, Marcus realized, often saw truth more clearly than adults who'd learned to hide from it. Yes, he said, because she deserved honesty. Probably soon, silence. Then what's going to happen to us? Marcus looked through the glass at Caroline, at the machines keeping her alive, at the life she'd built from love instead of logic. "I don't know yet," he admitted, "but I promise you won't be alone. Do you understand? Whatever happens, you won't be alone? Okay." Lily's voice was small, uncertain, but she was trying to be brave. "Can we see her?" "Before?" "Yes, I'll arrange it. Tomorrow morning." After they hung up, Marcus stood in that hospital corridor, and for the first time since he was a child, Marcus Blackwell cried. Not for long, not dramatically, but enough to wash away something that had calcified around his heart, revealing underneath it something raw and terrified, and still capable of breaking. He returned to Caroline's room and sat back down in his chair. "I'll do it," he told his sleeping sister. "I don't know how, but I'll try. I'll take them." Caroline's breathing remained steady, unchanged. But Marcus imagined he saw the ghost of a smile cross her face. Outside, Chicago blazed with lights, and somewhere in the city, 2 children tried to sleep in a neighbor's apartment, waiting to see if the cold uncle they barely knew would become the family they desperately needed. And Marcus Blackwell, CEO of a billion-dollar empire, sat in the darkness and wondered if he'd just made the most terrifying business decision of his life, or the first genuine human one. Marcus brought Lily and Nathan to the hospital at 9 a.m. Saturday. He'd picked them up from Rosa Martinez's apartment, a 5th-floor walk-up that smelled of coffee and cinnamon and had photographs covering every available wall surface. Rosa was in her 60s, sturdy and kind-eyed, and she'd packed the children's things with the efficiency of someone who'd raised 5 children of her own. "They are good kids," Rosa told Marcus at the door, pressing a container of homemade empanadas into his hands. "Lily is brave, but she holds everything inside. Nathan still wets the bed when he's scared. Don't shame him for it. And they both like their toast cut diagonally, not straight across. Small things matter when the big things are falling apart." Marcus had nodded, overwhelmed by details that had never existed in his carefully ordered world. Toast geometry, bedwetting protocols, the hidden architecture of childcare that working parents navigated daily, while people like him dismissed them as uncommitted to their careers. Now, standing outside Caroline's hospital room with 2 small hands gripping his own, Marcus felt utterly unprepared. Lily wore a purple dress she'd clearly picked herself, mismatched with striped leggings. Nathan clutched his stuffed dinosaur so tightly his knuckles had gone white. "Is she going to look scary?" Nathan whispered. Marcus knelt down, eye level with his nephew. "There will be tubes and machines, but it's still your mom, and she wants to see you very much." They entered together. Caroline was awake, propped up slightly. And despite everything, the pallor, the medical equipment, the unmistakable shadow of approaching death, her face transformed when she saw her children. "My babies," she breathed. Lily and Nathan rushed to the bedside, and Caroline wrapped them in arms that trembled with effort. Marcus stepped back, giving them space, watching as his sister murmured to them in a voice too quiet for him to hear. Lily was crying silently, tears streaming down her face while she tried to smile. Nathan pressed his face into his mother's shoulder, the dinosaur squashed between them. "Uncle Marcus is going to take care of you," Caroline said loud enough for him to hear. "He's going to make sure you have everything you need." Lily looked back at Marcus, her expression uncertain. He tried to smile reassuringly and failed miserably. They stayed for an hour. Caroline told them stories about when they were babies, made them promise to be good, reminded them they were loved. The conversation was ordinary and extraordinary at once. A mother saying goodbye to her children while pretending she wasn't. Children absorbing final lessons while pretending their world wasn't ending. When exhaustion finally claimed Caroline, a nurse gently suggested the children say their final goodbyes. Nathan kissed his mother's cheek and whispered something Marcus couldn't hear. Lily held her mother's hand and said, "I'll take care of Nathan. I promise. I know you will, sweetheart. But let Uncle Marcus help. You don't have to be grown up yet." In the hallway afterward, Nathan threw up from stress and grief. Marcus stood helplessly while a nurse appeared with paper towels and practiced calm. Lily rubbed her brother's back, murmuring comfort, 8 years old and already expert in caretaking. "Let's get you home," Marcus said, then realized his mistake. "I mean to your apartment, to get your things." The apartment felt different in daylight, smaller, more worn, but also warmer than Marcus remembered. Children's drawings still covered the refrigerator. A half-finished puzzle sprawled across the coffee table. The space hummed with the residue of life lived at close quarters, messy and immediate and utterly foreign to Marcus's minimalist existence. "Pack what's important to you," Marcus instructed. "Clothes, toys, books, whatever you need." Lily nodded and took Nathan's hand, leading him to their shared bedroom. Marcus stood alone in the living room, suddenly aware he had no idea what to do next. His penthouse had 2 bedrooms, his own, and a guest room that had never hosted guests. The guest room had a desk and a treadmill, no beds, no space for children who needed toast cut diagonally. His phone rang. "Richard, Marcus, the board is in chaos. Your proposal is scheduled for Tuesday, but without you there to defend it, cancel it," Marcus said. Silence. "Cancel it? The entire initiative? Tell the board we're tabling it indefinitely. But this was your priority. You spent months—" "Richard," Marcus cut him off. "Cancel it. That's final." He hung up before his CFO could argue. Through the bedroom door, he could hear Lily reading to Nathan, keeping her voice steady, even though Marcus could hear tears in it. A children's book about a brave mouse on an adventure. Marcus pulled out his laptop and began searching. Pediatricians who made house calls, child psychologists specializing in grief, furniture stores that delivered quickly, schools in the Gold Coast area. He attacked the problem like any business challenge: research, logistics, implementation planning, but children weren't business challenges. He discovered this when Lily emerged with a garbage bag full of clothes and a cardboard box containing a rock collection, a jewelry box that played tinny music, 3 well-loved chapter books, and a framed photograph of Caroline smiling on a beach somewhere. The kids as toddlers building sandcastles beside her. "Is this too much?" Lily asked quietly. Marcus looked at the meager collection of possessions this child had selected from her entire life. "No, it's not too much." Nathan appeared with his dinosaur, 2 stuffed bears, a blanket, and a shoebox. "My treasures," he announced solemnly. They loaded everything into Marcus's Aston Martin, which had never carried anything more substantial than a briefcase. The leatherback seat now held garbage bags and cardboard boxes, treasure boxes and stuffed animals that stared at Marcus through the rearview mirror like accusations. The drive to the Gold Coast was silent, except for Nathan's quiet sniffling. Marcus tried the radio, but the cheerful pop music felt obscene against the backdrop of their grief. He turned it off. "Are we going to live with you?" Lily finally asked. "Yes, for now." "Forever?" Marcus gripped the steering wheel. "I don't know. We'll figure it out. Do you want us?" The question pierced something in Marcus's chest. He glanced in the mirror at Lily's face, Caroline's eyes looking back at him, needing an answer that wasn't about logistics or obligations. "I want you to be safe and cared for," Marcus said carefully. "I want to do right by your mother." "That's not the same thing," Lily observed with uncomfortable accuracy. No, Marcus thought. It wasn't. The penthouse shocked the children into silence. They stood in the marble entryway, staring at the soaring ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city like a postcard. Everything was glass and steel and sharp edges. Nothing was soft. Nothing was safe for small hands and bodies. "Wow," Nathan breathed. "You live in a castle." "It's just an apartment," Marcus said, suddenly seeing his home through their eyes. Cold, sterile, a museum to success that had never been designed for life. He showed them the guest room with its treadmill and desk. "We'll need to get you beds and other things. What do children need in bedrooms?" Lily looked around the empty space. "Dresses? Nightlights? Somewhere to put toys?" Marcus made notes on his phone. His assistant could handle this. Jennifer was efficient, resourceful. She could transform this space into something functional by Monday. But then Nathan asked, "Can we paint it?" His small voice was hopeful. Mama said when we got a bigger place I could have blue walls. Marcus looked at the pristine white walls, the custom paint job that had cost $2,000. Sure, blue walls. And can Lily have purple? She wants purple. Blue and purple, Marcus agreed, watching something like cautious hope flicker across their faces. They ordered pizza for dinner because Marcus's kitchen contained a coffee maker and nothing else. The children ate on the floor because his dining table was glass and chrome and looked like an accident waiting to happen. Marcus sat on his Italian leather sofa watching them, these small creatures he'd inherited, and wondered what Caroline had seen in him that made her think he could do this. After dinner, Nathan fell asleep on the couch, exhausted by grief. Lily sat beside him, protective even in her own exhaustion. "Can I call you Uncle Marcus?" she asked suddenly. "That's my name," Nathan and I were wondering. Some kids at school, when their parents die, they call their guardians Mom or Dad. Should we? No. The word came out too sharp and Lily flinched. Marcus softened his tone. I'm not trying to replace your mother or father. I'm your uncle. That's enough, isn't it?" Lily nodded, but Marcus saw disappointment flicker across her face. What had she been hoping for? What did children need that he couldn't name? That night, Marcus made pallets on his bedroom floor, using every blanket and pillow he owned. It wasn't enough. His minimalist aesthetic meant he had 3 pillows total and 2 decorative throws. But the children curled up together, Nathan's dinosaur between them, and fell into the exhausted sleep of the traumatized. Marcus lay in his bed, a king-sized platform custom made in Denmark, and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in northwestern Memorial, his sister was dying. In his bedroom, 2 children slept on his floor because he didn't have proper beds for them. And somewhere in his chest, something that had been frozen for decades was beginning painfully to thaw. His phone buzzed. A message from Rosa Martinez. "The children will need breakfast. Lily likes oatmeal with brown sugar. Nathan only eats scrambled eggs if there's cheese. They will test you. Be patient. They are grieving." Marcus saved the message, then spent 2 hours researching what children ate for breakfast, where to buy child-appropriate groceries at 2 a.m. in Chicago, and how exactly one became the kind of person who knew these things without being told. The answer, he was learning, wasn't in any database. It was in showing up, paying attention, and trying not to fail catastrophically, while 2 small humans counted on him to figure it out. Outside his window, Chicago slept, and inside his perfectly ordered penthouse, chaos had arrived in the form of 2 children and their garbage bags of possessions, dismantling everything Marcus thought he knew about what mattered. The CEO who had built an empire on efficiency was about to learn that some of the most important work in life was inefficient, messy, and utterly unmeasurable by any metric he'd ever valued, and the lesson was just beginning. Marcus woke Monday morning to disaster. Nathan had wet the bed, or rather the makeshift pallet, and was crying hysterically. Lily stood frozen in the bathroom doorway, overwhelmed. The penthouse smelled of urine and failure. "It's okay," Marcus heard himself say, though nothing felt okay. He stripped the blankets, remembering Rosa's warning about shame. "Accidents happen. Let's get you cleaned up." But Nathan wouldn't stop crying, and Marcus didn't know how to comfort a 5-year-old having a meltdown. His phone showed 43 messages from work. The furniture delivery wasn't scheduled until Wednesday. He had no clean blankets, no proper breakfast food, and no idea what he was doing. By 8 a.m., Marcus admitted defeat. He called Rosa. She arrived within the hour, taking in the scene with knowing eyes, the soaked blankets in a heap. Nathan in oversized pajamas Marcus had improvised from T-shirts, Lily eating dry cereal because Marcus had no milk, and Marcus himself looking more disheveled than he'd been in 20 years. "You need help," Rosa said simply. "I can hire nannies." "You need more than a nanny, Mr. Blackwell. You need someone who understands children and grief and how to make a home feel safe." She paused. "I raised 5 children while working 3 jobs. My youngest just started college. I have time now, and those children need consistency. You want to work for me? I want to help those children." If working for you is how I do that, yes. Rosa looked around the sterile penthouse. This place needs warmth. Those children need routine. You need to learn what you should have learned a long time ago, that people aren't problems to solve. They're lives to share. Marcus hired her on the spot. Over the following days, Rosa transformed everything. She moved into the second guest room Marcus didn't know he had space for. She filled the kitchen with actual food, established morning routines, and created spaces where children could be children. She painted Nathan's walls blue and Lily's purple, letting them help with every brushstroke. Marcus watched from the sidelines, still commuting to work, but coming home earlier. The board meeting about his proposal never happened. He'd withdrawn it entirely. Richard questioned his judgment. Shareholders murmured about his sudden shift in priorities. Marcus stopped caring what they murmured about. Caroline died on a Tuesday evening, quietly, with Marcus holding her hand. The children weren't there. Rosa had kept them home, fed them dinner, helped them write letters to their mother that Marcus had read aloud at the bedside. Lily said, "Thank you for being my mama. I'll be brave." Nathan's was a drawing of dinosaurs and hearts. The funeral was small. The children cried. Marcus stood between them, their small hands in his, and felt the full weight of what he'd taken on. After the service, Rosa approached him. "Now the real work begins. Grief doesn't follow schedules, Mr. Blackwell. The children will need you even when it's inconvenient." She was right. Nathan had nightmares. Lily withdrew into angry silence. Marcus stumbled through bedtime stories and school conferences and meltdowns over homework. He was terrible at all of it, but Rosa was patient. She taught him how to braid Lily's hair, though his first attempts looked like disasters. She showed him how to calm Nathan during nightmares, sitting quietly until the boy's breathing steadied. She explained that children needed presence more than perfection. You're trying to manage them like employees. Rosa told him one evening, after a particularly difficult dinner, when Nathan refused to eat anything. Children don't need management. They need witness, someone who sees them struggling and stays anyway. I don't know how to just stay, Marcus admitted. I fix problems. That's what I do. Then learn a new skill. Rosa's voice was gentle but firm. Because love isn't solving. It's showing up when there's nothing to solve, when all you can do is sit in the difficulty together. Weeks passed. Then months. Marcus missed board meetings to attend school plays, where Lily had 2 lines. He left the office early for Nathan's parent-teacher conferences. He learned that toast cut diagonally really did taste better, that purple walls made Lily feel safe, and that sometimes the best thing he could do was simply listen without trying to fix anything. Rosa was there through all of it, cooking dinners the children actually ate, knowing when they needed space and when they needed comfort, teaching Marcus that the most important work he'd ever do wouldn't appear on any balance sheet. One Saturday morning, 6 months after Caroline's death, Marcus woke to laughter, real laughter. He found Nathan and Rosa making pancakes, flour everywhere, Nathan's dinosaur wearing a chef's hat that Lily had fashioned from paper. "Uncle Marcus," Nathan called. "We're making breakfast. Rosa says I can flip them." Lily appeared from her purple room, book in hand, and smiled at him. Actually smiled. "Morning. Nathan's going to burn them, but Rosa says that's how we learn." Marcus stood in his kitchen, now filled with mismatched mugs and children's drawings and the warm smell of vanilla, and felt something shift. This chaos, this noise, this complete disruption of everything he'd built, it felt like home. That evening, after the children were asleep, Marcus found Rosa reading in the living room. "I was wrong," he said quietly. Rosa looked up. "About?" "Everything. Children aren't burdens. They're," he struggled for words, "they're the point. My sister knew that." "You knew that? I'm just starting to understand it." Rosa smiled. "You're learning. That's what matters. I want to pay you what you're worth. Whatever you ask, Mr. Blackwell." Rosa closed her book. "I don't do this for money. I do this because those children needed someone, and because you needed to become someone worth needing. The payment is watching you figure out what your sister already knew, that success without connection is just expensive loneliness. Marcus sat down across from her. "Teach me, please. Teach me how to be what they need." "I already am," Rosa said gently. "Every day I am. And every day you learn a little more. That's all parenthood is, showing up imperfectly, learning constantly, and loving even when you don't know how." Outside, Chicago glowed with evening lights. Inside, two children slept in rooms painted the colors they'd chosen, their grief still present but no longer defining them. And Marcus Blackwell, CEO, billionaire, man who'd believed children were burdens, finally understood what his sister had tried to tell him. The maid he'd hired to help him hadn't just taught him how to care for children. She taught him how to be human again, and in learning to love two small humans who needed him, Marcus discovered something his billions never could have bought, a reason to measure his life by something more than profit. He measured it now in pancake breakfasts and braided hair, in nightmares comforted and homework completed, in purple walls and dinosaurs, and the sound of children laughing in rooms that had once held nothing but silence. The CEO who claimed children were burdens had learned the truth. They were blessings he'd been too blind to see, and it took a humble woman with flour on her hands and wisdom in her heart to open his eyes. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.